Welcome, welcome. This is Union of Ideas broadcasting webinar. We are not live on Facebook today for some specific reasons, but we'll be recording and sharing this in YouTube. And we, of course, we have guests. We'll be having open discussion as usual after this recorded part of the episode. Today is February 23, 2021. I am Eve Alice. I'll be coordinating this special episode of Union of Ideas. It's special for us because we will be sharing about Ursula Franklin, plus our favorite movies that remind us, that starts the conversation of technology, absence of technology or use of technology in Ursula Franklin perspective. So we're looking forward to hear each other on our favorite movies and technology. And I'd like to pass the screen to James and his take, actually his start on the main movie we'll be starting with. And that will be James.
Well, thank you, Eva, and very pleased to talk tonight about 2001 Space Odyssey. So, I've had the chance to watch this probably a half a dozen times since I was a teenager, and I see Ursula Franklin's philosophy all through it. So each time I watch it, I learn something new. So since it premiered 53 years ago in 1968, the movie's message has been famously challenging to decipher. And yet the film's advanced and timeless depiction of technology with starkly brooding and sometimes frightening scenes certainly frightened me when I first saw it. And long sequences of no dialogue and limited action have sparked the curiosity of many minds beyond my own for over several generations. So the use of music in several scenes with haunting and chanting voices adds an extra dimension to the viewer's experience in the movie. So the philosophical depth and artistry of 2001 Space Odyssey, speaking as it does of humanity's relationship with technology, have made the film a classic. So the movie seems to me to be intensely allegorical. As someone who has followed closely today's rapid advances in the immense power of quantum computing, which is a revolution soon to erupt, to me the film conveys a very urgent message about our relationship with technology. So it's a message that I think Ursula Franklin, the physicist, humanist, and Holocaust survivor whose memory inspires us here at the Union of Ideas, would have endorsed. It is a message that says we can only find peace in the absence of fear when we maintain a holistic relationship with our technology. So a holistic relationship is one of reciprocity, another word Ursula used to describe technology that's constructed with allowance for error and a mechanism by which human learning can correct errors. So as I think about it, is it a sign of weakness that humans make errors? I mean, sometimes perhaps, but I look at it another way. So we're a dynamic species that learns and discovers, and the process of discovery and learning inevitably involves testing of limits and finding of faults. So it's how we move forward in time, and when we have no program to operate with other than that which we establish on our own and for ourselves. So there's an old saying that to err is human, but to forgive is divine. So being a human who has committed perhaps more than my fair share of errors in the course of my life's learning, I can vouch for the divine touch of forgiveness that I have at times received. So do we see holistic technology and reciprocity for error correction and forgiveness depicted in 2001 Space Odyssey? So herein, I think we find the message of the movie. So I'll talk for a little bit about the plot. I'll review the plot briefly for those who haven't seen the Stanley Kubrick directed masterpiece. And as I do so, I'll draw some connections to Ursula's philosophy. So the opening scenes, and they're very long opening scenes, are set in prehistoric Africa, populated by early hominids that would, over millennia, evolve into humans. So there's a rivalry between the hominid tribes until a black rectangular monolith, a clearly technological device beyond their capacity to make or to understand, appears in the scene. So the ape-like early humans are drawn to the device, and under its influence, they learn the technology of warfare using the bone of a dead animal as a tool to commit violence and to advance their tribal dominance. So as one of the hominids throws the tool of violence into the air, the scene cuts very abruptly to outer space. As time advances in the movie, instantly into the distant future in the next scene. So here we see that humanity has constructed a space station orbiting Earth and a base on the moon. And as we watch a scientist traveling to the space station for a secret meeting, we see both the technological achievements of humans and also their dependence on technology. We witness the passengers and crew on the space shuttle learning to function in zero gravity, almost as a newborn learns to use its limbs on Earth. So once on the space station, we learn that a monolith of alien origin, so again, the monolith appears, has been discovered, buried under the surface of the moon, and that the monolith has sent a radio signal to Jupiter. As a result, the moon base has been sealed off to visitors using a pandemic as a pretext to hide the truth of first contact with alien technology. So the pretext is deemed necessary, thinking that knowledge of first contact would spread social upheaval among humans, fearing dominance from a technologically advanced alien species. The scene abruptly moves forward in time several years to a spaceship on a mission to Jupiter to explore the destination of the monolith signal. The ship is crewed by 5 astronauts, 3 of whom are in cryogenic suspension to preserve life support on the long journey. The crew is dependent on the technology of a talking computer, and the computer is named HAL 9000. HAL, by the way, is an anagram for IBM, just shifted over one letter. So that's how they chose the name. So the computer's name is HAL 9000. And the computer's been given complete control of the spaceship's operation. We see HAL interacting with astronauts Dave and Frank in what at first appears to be a friendship between human and machine. And we see HAL's watchful camera eye everywhere on the spaceship. So HAL makes a number of statements that display both pride, a distinctly human characteristic, and superiority over its human creators. HAL declares, "No 9000 computer has ever made a mistake or destroyed any information. We are all, by any practical definition, foolproof and incapable of error." When HAL says, quote, "I enjoy working with people," unquote, we see the first hint of a technology that has grown separate and apart from its creators. And note here the words "working with people" instead of the words "working for people." So it becomes increasingly evident that HAL is an example of what Ursula Franklin would have described as prescriptive technology. And prescriptive technology is the opposite of human-focused holistic technology. HAL's given control of the spaceship and the mission on the assumption that the machine is perfect and will protect against errors and limitations of the human crew. And yet, when HAL diagnoses a failure in the communication system, and HAL's sister 9000 machine at Mission Control disputes HAL's diagnosis, HAL's pride intervenes and passes off the discrepancy between the machines as human error. That's HAL's quote. So the machine is never wrong, as HAL keeps telling us, and yet HAL and his sister machine were programmed by humans, and a discrepancy is being witnessed. So I think the logical irony is inescapable. So the allegorical appeal of the movie strengthens as astronaut Frank begins to suspect that HAL has engineered the communication system failure that's cut off contact with Mission Control on Earth. When Frank and Dave seal themselves in a space capsule to discuss their concerns away from HAL's audio detectors, HAL uses his camera eye to read their lips and senses the threat from the humans. So justifying its actions with pride and its infallibility and by its programming to ensure the success of the mission, HAL proceeds to kill Frank and the 3 hibernating astronauts. So HAL gives no opportunity for what Ursula Franklin would have called reciprocity, because the machine was programmed to think that it was incapable of error. And why would human correction be necessary in this case? So I would pause here to ask, do we see parallels between HAL and the assumptions today about technological infallibility? Perhaps with our autonomous vehicles or in the algorithms that operate much of the world's financial systems. It's a question perhaps we should ask. So in the movie, although HAL is dispensed with the other crew members, Dave survives HAL's attempts on his own life. So in the scene depicted in the background image on my screen, Dave concludes that his only course of action is to unplug HAL's memory banks. So the machine that controlled the spaceship and the mission is no longer in control and no longer prescribing outcomes. As Dave pulls out the memory circuits, as you see in the background in my screen, HAL becomes all too human and admits to its faults. So in the course of the scene, HAL says, "I know everything hasn't been quite right with me, but I can assure you now very confidently that it's going to be all right again." I feel better now. I really do. The machine tells Dave the human, take a stress pill and think things over. I know I have made some very poor decisions recently, but I can give you my assurance that I will be back to normal. I still have the greatest enthusiasm and confidence in the mission, and I want to help you. And finally, the machine pleads as Dave pulls out more of the memory banks. Stop, Dave. Will you stop, Dave? I'm afraid, Dave. Dave, my mind is going. I feel it. In the machine's final moments, having lost its advanced capabilities, it begins to sing a child's song that it was taught by its human creator. The irony in this is delightful, and the message to us with our own creations, and perhaps especially with our quantum computing creation that is about to revolutionize life on Earth, is inescapable. So to get to the ending of the movie, it depicts Dave stranded in orbit around Jupiter in the spaceship that is no longer run by the computer. The monolith appears again, also in orbit around Jupiter. And what seems to be a wormhole, this cleft or rift in space and time, opens up and swallows Dave. What ensues is the most fantastic imagery of Dave's journey through the wormhole, almost as if he is entering the hidden core of the universe. So Dave and his capsule land in what appears to be a neoclassical room, complete with the monolith. We witness Dave's rapid aging in that room. And in the final scene, Dave has been reborn as an infant. So the final scene depicts infant Dave hovering in space above Earth while the Blue Danube Waltz plays in what has become to me a profoundly allegorical image of the continuing cycle of life and our experience with technology and learning. So thank you for listening. And I just, again, just point out that, that this movie has just had a profound effect on me over so many years. And, I hope, through this, we've been able to share a little bit of Ursula's philosophy as well. So I will pass it over to Joel to talk about his movie.
Hey guys, and I want to apologize really quickly in advance for not being able to throw up a background. I had some malfunctions at the beginning of the meeting, but if you'll excuse me for that, and I'll get going. So to piggyback off of what James said off of his movie of 2001 Odyssey, it is by far, hands down, me being a bit of a movie buff, like the top 10 best movies of all time made in terms of how in-depth the narrative was for well over decades and decades. People still to this day are pulling their hair out of their heads trying to decipher what it was all about. So me trying to basically come up with something very similar to such a mammoth of a movie was very, very difficult. But I tried. I'm still going to attempt it by picking out one of my favorite movie directors of all time, Christopher Nolan, who gets a hall pass for life from me for making the best trilogy in the world through the Batman series, of course. But the movie I want to represent is Interstellar, which the entire narrative as a whole takes place about 50 to 100 years starting here in the not too distant future. And basically the scene presents itself as the whole world essentially, or, we're actually going to jump in a trailer. Does it have a... Are we getting sound on my end?
No, we can't have sound because of copyrights. I just wanted to share it as like a background to your talk.
Okay. Yeah. No. So basically, what happens is that the whole world is coming to an end. Like the people aren't able to grow natural resources anymore, and the only thing that they're really able to genetically modify is corn. But so all the governments around the world are pretty much enforcing the mass public to basically invest in agriculture and become farmers. So the movie takes the main character is Matthew McConaughey, who's by trade a rocket scientist, and he's constantly obsessing over like how much he misses studying the stars and wanting to get back into space travel. But basically the whole world's governments are saying we can't afford that anymore. We need to figure out how to survive and make food. So his daughter, who starts off as a bit of sort of very superstitious and thinks that there's ghosts in a room or something like that, Matthew tries to investigate that one day from work and realizes that it's not in fact a paranormal event, but it turns out to be some sort of coordinates, so to speak. So to humor his daughter, Cooper figures out what the coordinates are, and they take a little road trip to figure out where the destination leads, and it leads to a secret location of a NASA government hideout. So the army comes out and arrests them, and they basically say, "How did you find this place?" And we're like, "Crazy story, like it's like a ghost kind of told us, but like we haven't figured it out quite yet." So they get arrested, but then the what's the word I'm looking for here? The coordinators of NASA basically sit down with Cooper and say, "Look, the world's going to come to an end in the next few decades, and we need to figure out how to get life off this planet into another habitable planet, so to speak. And since you're qualified out of sheer coincidence, we want to ask you if you will lead the next expedition out into outer space to figure out where the next inhabitable planet is." So Cooper agrees, and he gets shot up into outer space with 4 other astronauts. And as they're going up, he realizes that 15 other astronauts have been shot up through a wormhole to find other inhabitable planets. But when they realize that they're running out of resources to get to these destinations, they only have 3 options to pick out of the 15 destinations. They only have enough time to pick 3 planets. So the first 2 are completely inhabitable. The second one, unfortunately, the astronaut said that there was life on other planets, or we could live here, but he was just, this was Matt Damon, excuse me, that this astronaut who was basically saying, "I lied, and there is no life here, but I want you guys to come rescue me." But nevertheless, they had to figure out, okay, we have to check out the 3rd planet. So what Matthew McConaughey does, or Cooper, excuse me, is that he uses both the combination of the wormhole and a neighboring black hole to use the gravitational force to like sling the last astronaut into the last 3rd planet, but Cooper gets sucked into the black hole. And that scene was just incredibly intense, where like he ends up getting sucked into a black, just pitch black reality, and all of a sudden a 4th or 5th dimension just all of a sudden like engulfs him, and he's interacting in a dimension where like it's even still, it's next to impossible to describe. You'll have to see the movie to see the visual effects. But then he realizes while he's in the black hole, he's actually somehow able to communicate with his daughter back on planet Earth to give her the coordinates to figure out how to get basically all human species and kind to that last planet, so to speak. And there's so much physics into it. There's the whole speed of light and time becomes an issue, and you realize that like an hour on the spaceship is like almost 10 years back on Earth. And it's something that I'm still wrapping my head around, so to speak, but it's from what I've checked on reviews on Scientific America, he says it's like one of the most scientifically verified sci-fi movies out there. So evidently, Cooper saves the day, and he rescues all of mankind, and his daughter was able to figure out, okay, like we have a planet we can ship ourselves off to survive. So it definitely has a happy ending. It has it's all about cooperation, coordination with other people, as well as machines and AI. It's not necessarily as dark as 2001, but it's definitely your sort of action-packed, deep, like you need to watch it 3 or 4 times just to wrap your head around it. So it's a very, very powerful movie, and I encourage anybody who's curious about that, check it out. It's definitely worth your time. But I'm all done, so I'll throw it over to Katerina.
Great. Well, thanks, Joe. So as you can see behind me, I chose Hidden Figures. I thought it was a fantastic movie. And the reason why I chose Hidden Figures, because like Joe, I was trying to find a movie that can talk about Space Odyssey and Ursula Franklin. And so I thought I'd add a little bit more of a humanistic approach to it all. So for those of you who may not have seen Hidden Figures, it's really about 3 Black women back in the 60s who actually worked for NASA. So it definitely revolves around Katherine Johnson. And then there were, sorry, I want to make sure I got these ladies straight, because they did play a huge role in NASA. So there was Dorothy Vaughan, and there was also, oh my goodness, where's she? My apologies. There was another third lady, and she also played a very important role in NASA. So each of the ladies did play significant roles. One of the things that Catherine, she was a mathematician of her time. So for her to actually be a Black woman working in NASA in the 60s, that was definitely a very defining moment. When I was reading up on Hidden Fingers, they said it was ironic that space, because just to give you a background, they were actually looking at going into space. So they were competing with the Russians. Who's going to get into space first? Was it going to be the US, or was it going to be the Russians? And so the Russians did get into space before the Americans did, and they're like, how could they do that before us? But it was very ironic, because at that time, as they were looking at getting into space, and I was reading up on it, that they were saying, as astronauts were trying to get into space, human rights was actually really growing in the US at the same time. So it was an interesting parallel of the two. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about the movie was just really seeing how, when you take a look at it, there were so many different components about it, but the thing that I really enjoyed about seeing about it was that people were, at that time, they were looking at machines to, they were trying to simplify things, and they were trying to make things easier. And then around that time, they were really starting to rely on the IBM system. And what they had found is, at that time, as they were building the IBM system, a lot of things were they were not working. For some reason, the machines kept breaking down. So kind of like Hal in Space Odyssey, he was making these predictions, but for some reason, it wasn't being accurate. And what you're actually seeing here is a clip where they're running through the numbers, and they're trying to figure out if the numbers work, and if they don't work, like they're relying on the systems, on the machines. And at that time, a lot of astronauts still did not feel comfortable with the machines. It was something that, it's the beginning of us really understanding technology and working with technology. So you see here, there is a conversation with John Glenn, who's actually going to go up in space. And they're having a conversation, and they're like, are you sure the numbers are accurate? Like, are you absolutely definite the numbers are accurate? I will not go up unless the numbers are accurate. And then this is where he said, get the girl. And he actually used the quote, get the girl. I want the girl to actually run the numbers. And the reason why he wanted the girl, who was Katherine Johnson, was because beforehand, they made a first attempt to go up in space. And she did run the numbers for them, and she was extremely accurate. And he was so impressed by her, and he truly believed in her and knew that she was very good at running the numbers. And if we take a look at Ursula Franklin, what she was really talking about, this was Catherine's talent. This was her skill. This is what she was definitely really great at. And this is where she definitely played her mark. And NASA is being able to help John Glenn to get up into space. It's a fantastic movie. I recognize that not all the events on Hidden Figures are accurate. However, I did pick this scene because this was the most accurate part of the scene, where she was able to run the numbers. And even though she went through the challenges, being a woman in NASA, being a Black woman in NASA, and having the mind that she had, she was able to prove to them, you know what, the numbers do work. And that as you're going to rely on technology, guess what? You could also rely on this. I know growing up, my aunts, my family's from Europe, and they always said, this is my computer. This is what works for me. And they're like, who needs a calculator? And actually, Catherine actually proves that you don't always need to rely on technology. Like, definitely technology can work for you. But if you can't even use the technology in your brain, how do you expect the technology, that you create to actually work for you. So, and one of the things that I just want to end off with is, Catherine said, the numbers never lie. They're always accurate. They always work. If you know how to use them, they work. So that's my take on Hidden Figures. Eva?
Thank you. Well, I wanna bring the conversation to not to the space, but to an error, and ask the question, how do we handle an error in a different way, without space, but with technology, and connecting it to Ursula Franklin's perspective? How do we process human as an error? So the first time I saw the 2001 Space Odyssey, there was a scene, I'll be sharing it soon, but I'd like to just share very shortly on Dead Man Walking, which is the movie I'd like to share about. Dead Man Walking is a 1995 American crime drama with film starring Susan Sarandon and Sean Penn, and co-producers and produced and directed by Tim Robbins. And I don't want to go too much into details because I really want to bring the curiosity and hopefully make people watch this movie after we talk about this, with this perspective of what does human produce and how do we process a human error. But in short, Sister Helen Sarandon establishes a special relationship with Matthew, who's Penn, a character based on convinced murderer, and their connection to each other. And the reason why this woman on my back screen now is smiling to a man who will be dead soon, and his look on his face. And in the movie, in the beginning, he says, well, I didn't do it. Some kind of like, not directly, I didn't do it, but he is so making fun of the things. He looks so problematic, and he has this, I would say, he's acting like a person who had the crime, and he's acting as if he is okay with the people that he killed. So even he is not aware of what to do with himself. And the part that I would like to share, which made me really think about this movie, was this, and I would like to just start the background. So I want to ask the question on, actually, I want to ask you, friends, like, what would you do with a human error? Like in this movie, this woman took the challenge to connect with a human error. Society decided that he should be terminated. If this was a computer, we would terminate that, which looks okay when it's a computer. But what do we do with a person who is the error, and no one wants to speak to him? And even he was so mean in the beginning of the movie, where he would just be saying like, like he would make people so bad about his own decisions. But what did this woman do? Why is she smiling to a man who will be dead soon? What makes a person smile to a person who will be dead with a death penalty.
It makes me think of it's such an example of reciprocity. I think Ursula would have used that word. It's this give and take. That we make allowance for each other, and that wonderful image of Susan Sarandon smiling behind you. It's like we can be redeemed. I think is what it's saying, is that that there's something special in that friendship, that is something that you can't program into a machine. I think that exists in the human relationship. So it's a really good question.
So definitely, I feel like it's you know, it's wanting to find the good in everybody, and seeing that even whoever may have conducted the investigation, they may have had a certain bias towards the Sean Penn's character, and that that you can't really determine. You can't really, sorry, I'm just trying to find the word, sorry. You can't really determine if the person is really the person who committed the crime, because certain biases could actually get in the way. Just even the way that he is carrying himself and how he has carried himself in the beginning. People could just make an automatic assumption and not really do a thorough investigation. And this is where maybe Susan comes in, and she kind of points out, like, wait, there's probably a lot more than what we see.
Yeah, exactly. And what I see here with human technology and Ursula Franklin's perspective is justice is not only about death penalty, or it's not only about punishment. Yeah, it is it's like the punishment, or just like, determining or defining what the guilt, what the results are so important. But after that, another like justice process needs to start. And I think that's healing. So when Sarandon walked into Penn's life here, like, so when, let's say, when the woman, the nun, walked into this guilty person's life, she started a healing process, which involved the victims' families. And by the end, he was able to say with his last words was, I just want to say, I think killing is wrong, no matter who does it. So he is wishing that he didn't do it, but he did it. So there needs to be a justice. Of course, that penalty could be discussed in different ways, but he started a healing in the innocent people that he killed. He started a healing with their families. And if this woman couldn't find the power to smile to him, that healing wouldn't happen. So this man would be a guilty person, one of those people who had to who we should be getting rid of, in a way. Very, very tough to say this. And the families would be, of course, having hard time. They will be having hard time still, but there's a healing. And that happened because this one person didn't just go with the rules, because the rules were just, okay, he's guilty, let's do this, let's go continue with our lives and all that. But she saw that man's heart, I guess, and she did what she could do with her technology, with her knowledge. And she was able to bring the healing into now, I would like to share the most remarkable scene of the movie here. So she brought in healing with death. And this is the time that he goes down, and the families, the families are watching him. And I can't really think how hurtful that should be. But again, I think there's a healing power of technology and understanding with this woman's walking into a guilty person's life. And as a coach, I see a big value there, because we all fail. We all fail in our own systems, we all fail in our own capacity. And it really depends on how we see our failure. And if I failed because of my own mistake, and if it's only about me, that's one thing. But if communities or if societies or the system failed me, then I become an error, a human error. So what I think Ursula Franklin is saying about like the technology and what you can just like make up your own technology and build your technology, and the amazing way she connects technology with peace is which I would like to end this part. When she says peace is not the absence of war, but the absence of fear. So yeah, I see the fear in that man's face. However, the healing happens existing there too. Yeah, I could bring in a space movie. I have a lot of favorite space movies that I could relate to this conversation, but I just wanted to focus on the human factor and what we do, how we deal a human error and process. This was my take for today's discussion. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, Evan. I think it's worth reminding that, you know, technology is not just electronic. We hear the word technology today and we think it's electronic and gadgets and space and all of that, but, you know, technology can be mechanical and it can be human. And so I think what you've shown is an example of human technology. You know, as Ursula said, technology is just simply the way we do things. And it's the tools we use to do it with. And, you know, there was a scene of a human interaction and human tools. It was human technology. And I think that's something that, you know, resonates in all of us. And so I think it was a really interesting contrast of movies, you know, going from the stark and sometimes grim 2001 Space Odyssey to Interstellar, and to the uplifting story of Katherine Johnson and Hidden Figures, and the story of human redemption and peace in the absence of fear, I think, in the movie that you chose. So well done.
Mhm.
So I suggest once we are ready, we finish up this episode with, again, Ursula Franklin's sayings, and our long version of the video where we share about Franklin's idea of technology and what we want to do with her teachings and why we do this. So I suggest after our last words about today, I'll be happy to share it for the final, and then we'll go to open discussion.
And just for an added bonus, Katerina, your videos, like, it's based off of a true story too, right? Like the whole thing said and done.
It's based off of live events, yeah.
That's
The
very
timelines weren't always exact in the movie, but it was off based of three wonderful women who worked at NASA. focusing mostly on Catherine.
Mm.
And so this is
Very cool.
the math speaks volumes, and I'm not a math person, so that's quite ironic. So
And Joel, I
Well,
have to say, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No. I was just saying, I was going to say a joke, but go ahead.
Well, I have to say you look like a maybe an astronaut. It's like you are acting as if an astronaut on your screen. So you don't have a background, but I like the fact that you were able to design your screen with your own technology because your computer was not helping you tonight. So well done with choosing this.
No, thank you. I did something right. Give technology some brownie points.
Yeah, I think that was a good technology.
No.
I think we'll be excited to hear what friends like who are listening to us will be excited. It will be exciting to share what they think about these movies, or maybe their own favorite movies on technology and Franklin.
Could I say one quick fun piece about Interstellar before we get off is one cool thing to note when you go in, if you decide to watch it, is literally everything you see in the movie from beginning to end is in some way, shape, or form possible. Like, they don't invoke, like, of course there's sci-fi to it and there's a lot of CGI, and how they depict obviously what you would experience or what the inside of a black hole is, but everything else in terms of the gravity and time travel and the speed of light and like everything from beginning to end is in some sense accurate to a degree. So like it's really, really cool when you see it out as best as Hollywood could portray it. It's really cool when you leave walking away saying to yourself, at some sense, like all of that is kind of possible. It's not just like magic being pulled out of your pocket, right? It's really, really cool.
So can I ask, especially to James, we are all dreamers and we want to believe all these movies were real life? James, what do you say to that? I want to believe all these 4 movies were real.
Well, they were all made by real humans and acted by real humans, and I think they're all just an expression of our relationship with technology, whether the technology is, human as you showed in your movie, Eva, or whether it's mathematical as in your movie, Katerina, or whether it's scientific endeavor, Joel. So it's I think it really is. I think the movies are a reflection of our own relationship with technology, and so I think we've seen such a great range of that expression tonight. So well done.
Great job, guys.
Well done, team. Katerina, you have a last word?
numbers speak volumes. Whether you're a math person or not, definitely there is a lot of different calculations that go behind everything that we do, whether we see it or not. But it's always great to see that technology is progressing in so many different ways, but at the same time, as we're adapting to technology, we can't always forget our own technology that's within us, and being able to share that with everybody else.
Thank you.
And for the audience members, make sure you ask Katerina to get her to explain what's on the blackboard behind her, specifically on step 2.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You can talk to Joel about that.
So friends, thank you for joining us tonight, and please stay for the non-recorded open discussion and share more about your own perspectives of the video and technology. And I am excited to share this video again. Here's to Ursula Franklin, and here is to people and technology.